Hello, space friends. What would happen if the universe of Star Trek and the game EVE Online collided? Let's pitch the original refit Enterprise from about the same time of Star Trek II The Wrath of Khan against an as yet unknown ship from EVE Online. EVE Online is the biggest and oldest space MMO in existence. At 20 years old, it's still kicking and better than ever. This has been a long time coming and maybe just one of several videos on this topic, and I'll be using animated starship models and effects to create this. Perhaps in the future we will graduate to the next generation era, but for now let's see how Kirk and Spock, with the crew of the Enterprise at their side, could deal with the ruthless nature of the EVE Online universe. And if you like this kind of content, please hit the subscribe button below and consider supporting the channel on patreon.com/resurrected. Certain membership tiers on Patreon will enable me to give you a custom starship render, perhaps with a custom name and registry number on it. I've recently been able to do a lot of EVE models as well, so if you want an EVE model with the name on it, feel free to let me know and become a patron on Patreon. Also want to give a shout out to Tony Morrow of Star Trek New Worlds, who runs a massive Starfleet Battles gaming campaign, along with his YouTube channel, ST New Worlds. I've been doing a bit of work with him, rendering some custom starship flyby scenes. Check out the New Worlds YouTube channel, which will be in the link in the description below. Alright, let's get started. Captain's Log, Stardate Arbitrary Complex Number 6.17. The Enterprise is investigating the loss of the USS Issaquah in Sector 33 TAC 9. We've located the wreck of the destroyer. All hands have been lost. We are nowhere near Klingon, Romulan, or any other hostile space. But we know that the ship was attacked based on the partial recovery of the Issaquah's logs and flight recorder. After the Enterprise and crew reviews the logs and flight recording of the Issaquah, they determine that the ship was investigating what appears to be a very unusual wormhole. As for the unknown attacker, there is no sign of them, and they conclude that the ship must have come through the wormhole to attack the Issaquah. Scotty is intrigued by the design of the mysterious ship and points out that it has no warp nacelles or identifiable means of faster-than-light travel, according to their science. But McCoy considers that the ship might have torn open the wormhole itself, and that they could be hundreds or thousands of years more advanced. Kirk decides that they must go through this wormhole and investigate the possible threat to the Federation. He orders the ship to red alert and tells Sulu to take them in. On the other side, they find themselves in the middle of an unknown star cluster, somewhat removed from the rest of the galaxy, with nebula all around. There are few recognizable celestial markers, but navigation notices that stellar drift has taken place, indicating that they are in fact several thousands of years into the future. Fascinating, Spock says. They take a moment to analyze the system. Uhura determines that it is inhabited based on a number of subspace signals. There are no habitable planets, but there are several space structures, including what appear to be giant storage stations in orbit of every planet, mostly automated, but receiving materials from small resource colonies on some of the planets. There also appear to be a couple of giant refinery stations orbiting some moons. These stations are pulling ores from the moon's surface. Again, hails to these structures go unanswered. And finally, the Enterprise discovers that there are massive stargates that seem to generate artificial wormholes and connect to other stargates and other star systems in a matter of seconds. Unfortunately, the Enterprise is not able to access these stargates. But no ships are detected until Uhura repeats she is receiving an open broadcast through the system. It is simply, "Hello?" And then they detect a ship arriving. It seems to drop out of warp from nowhere. The ship is a fraction of the size of the Enterprise with no visible weapons, and Spock determines that it's likely a scout vessel of some kind, which holds position at about 100 kilometers from the Enterprise. Kirk answers the hail. "This is the Federation starship Enterprise. We are on a peaceful exploration mission and new to this area of space." There's a pause, and the answer finally comes. "I am Ek Shen Lopan. That's an interesting ship you've got there. Is it an AT or a special edition ship? Kirk looks to Spock with a confused expression. Spock cocks an eyebrow. The Enterprise is a ship of exploration. Although we are capable of defending ourselves, we're on a peaceful exploration mission. Okay, Eggshen says in response. I am just probing. Kirk mutes the comms and looks at McCoy and Spock for opinions. This is definitely not the ship that destroyed the Issaquah. Correct, Captain. This one appears to have no weapons. Energy patterns indicate that the ship is equipped with survey equipment and several scanning probes, but the life signs are all human. Human? McCoy gawks. Jim, this could be us thousands of years from now. If so, this may not be a good thing. Our very presence here could be polluting the timeline. Not necessarily, Captain. Although we seem to be thousands of years in the future, it is more likely we have entered an alternate timeline, while our own is preserved. Further analysis is required. Jim, that Eggshen fella might know something about the ship that destroyed the Issaquah. Right, he might. Kirk unmutes the transmission. We've arrived here through a wormhole after investigating the destruction of one of our ships. There seemed to be a warship involved that was heavily armed. Do you have any knowledge of hostile ships in the area? Eggshen chuckles and says, Most ships in this area are hostile. This is not high security space. I see, so you mean to say it might have been an independent actor? Who knows? Pirate probably. I did see a Bruix hanging out in some of the belts at Planet 10. There's probably some wrecks there. Hang on, I'll go look. In an instant, the strange scout ship accelerated to warp and vanished, leaving the Enterprise dumbfounded. Ah yes, there are some wrecks here. Are you coming? Everyone is stunned by the speed that the other ship entered warp and arrived at the destination in a few seconds. Normally, for a Starfleet ship, especially in the solar system, a course would need to be carefully plotted to avoid space debris and with navigational deflectors to full. It would take the Enterprise several minutes to follow. Scotty determines that the warp capability of these ships, while fast within a star system, did not have sufficient power to maintain high warp for very long periods of time, which is probably powered by a central capacitor. So to travel to another star system without the stargates could take months, whereas the Enterprise could manage such a journey in no time at all once the solar system was cleared. When they arrive at the asteroid belt, Eggshen holds position again over 100 kilometers away, and there is some wreckage. You can see the ticker identifier on the wrecks. The salvage rights belong to a large pirate alliance. Your attacker was a pirate. Enterprise examines the wrecks. Dr. McCoy knows that there are several corpses, and he has them beamed to sickbay for further study. Uh-oh, check your directional scan. I'm out of here. Eggshen's ship turns and quickly accelerates to warp, leaving the Enterprise alone. Chekhov warns of a proximity alert, and then... Remarkable, so this is our Bruix. Captain, Scotty speaks up. Yes, Scotty. As far as I can tell, those turrets are nasty, but only at close range. Their energy will dissipate. You'd better keep your distance. I'd say at least 12 kilometers. Well, if that's all, it shouldn't be an issue. Mr. Sulu, keep our range to 20 kilometers. Lock phasers on target. They are locking weapons, Captain. They are firing. As predicted, the shots from the Bruix-class battlecruiser dissipate before hitting the Enterprise, but the Bruix accelerates and attempts to close the gap. And then 5 smaller craft from the Bruix launch from various tubes and quickly close the distance. They begin spraying the Enterprise shields with energy bolts. Shields are holding, Captain, but we will be down in minutes. Spock determines that these are drone-controlled ships. Kirk orders Sulu to expand the distance from the Bruix, thinking the drones have limited control range. The Enterprise locks up the drones, unless the phasers go to work on them. The Enterprise is able to destroy 3, and then the remaining drones turn and head back to the Bruix's drone bay. Maybe they'll talk when they're without shields. Fire phasers at will until the shields drop to 5%. The Enterprise eventually brings the shields down of the battlecruiser. Now that wasn't very difficult, was it, Spock? I advise caution, Captain. Agreed, Spock, but we will need more information. Open a hailing frequency. You have attacked a Federation starship. You will cease hostilities immediately or face the consequences. Now why have you attacked us? The pirate appears on the screen briefly and then says, "They call me Peepo. Yeah, man, I just wanted some kills. And your ship was strange, so I wanted to crack it open to see what's inside it. Let's fight. Talk later. We're almost there." Kirk is puzzled. "Captain, reading an energy build-up on that ship." In an instant, the warship seems to have teleported exactly 100 kilometers, apparently using some form of short-range jump technology. "They're right on top of us, Captain. Increase power to shields. Back us off." "I can't," Sulu exclaims. "A stasis field is slowing us down to a crawl." "What? Can you go to warp?" "No, unable to generate a warp field, Captain. There seems to be a subspace jamming or scrambling effect from that ship." "Incoming!" Chekhov exclaims. The Bruix pelts the Enterprise's shields with a blinding barrage of plasma. "Our shields will not last long. Fire phasers at will. Disable that ship." The Enterprise soon collapses the Bruix shields. There seemed to be a thin layer of armor. The phasers were cutting through this as well into the structure of the ship, but the Bruix continued to fire, unfazed. "That ship's defense is in our structural integrity, Captain, not shields or armor." Soon the Enterprise figures out that their phasers alone are not going to be enough to disable the Bruix. Kirk orders the torpedoes to lock onto the Bruix's engines so that the resulting blast from the torpedoes do not affect the Enterprise. "It's still ticking, Captain. It's not enough before it will destroy us. Shields are failing." And then suddenly Spock reports 2 more ships arriving out of warp, a configuration vastly different than anything they had seen before. Great, this is all we need. But the 2 ships fire a beam not unlike a phaser from the strange black ball turrets and attack the Bruix, clearly able to attack from far beyond the Bruix's effective blaster range. Kirk takes the opportunity to put all power into impulse engines and burn away from the warp scrambler that the Bruix has on them. Spock notices that the energy beams from the other 2 ships are becoming increasingly more powerful as they maintain contact with the Bruix, until the Bruix's hull begins to crack. "We are free of the warp disabling effect. Let's not stick around to see if these others are friendly. Warp speed, Sulu, any course." After the Enterprise is in warp, a voice comes over the comms. "Hello there." And then a man with a strange mask appears in the viewer. "Well, hello, and thank you for your intervention back there." "That guy is always causing trouble. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to destroy them. Of course, he's not actually dead. Right now, he's waking up in a clone chamber somewhere, but at least with -1 battlecruiser." "Fascinating," Spock says. "Right. I'm Kirk of the Federation Starship Enterprise. And who might you be?" "Really?" The person from the other ship speaks up. "Do you not know of the infamous Maximilian Bonaparte?" "Let me guess. Another pirate?" "Well, yes, but an honorable one." "Do you come from a different civilization than the others? Your ships are quite different." "No, these are Triglavian ships. They're quite effective. Precursor technology and all that." The conversation continues, and eventually an exchange of information is traded. Max educates Kirk about the nature of the New Eden star cluster, and he tells Kirk that he should go back through that wormhole and never return, because if the wormhole's existence is discovered by any number of dangerous powers, it would represent a huge danger to the Federation and their timeline. Before traveling back through the wormhole, Scotty determines a way to effectively increase the mass of the Enterprise through some clever warp field manipulation, just enough to collapse the wormhole when the Enterprise travels back through. Kirk then says, "How about that, Spock? A future consisting of only humans as far as we can tell, cybernetically enhanced, and effectively immortal." McCoy then says, "And just look at what that immortality has gotten them. A ruthless universe where they don't value life in the same way we do, Jim." "For once, we agree, Doctor, and in spite of what we could learn from that civilization, I am grateful that they will remain in their own universe." "True, but even in a ruthless universe, as Maximilian has shown us, there are a few slivers of light, a few diamonds in the rough, so to speak." Mr. Sulu, take us out. Warp 6. Well, Space Friends, thanks for sticking with me through this. This particular video took a very long time to produce, especially finding some Eve ship models and getting them ready for a video, and I also had to go out of town this past month. But it's good to be back and making videos. Be sure to consider supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/resurrected. The link is in the description. YouTube ad revenue is sometimes great and sometimes terrible, but having other things like Patreon really kind of helps to smooth those rough edges and income out. Also, a super thanks is very helpful, so feel free to give me a super thanks, and more content to come soon. Until next time, Space Friends.